Hey YouTube, I wanted to share my first shoot with you with the Canon EOS R6. It was a lot of fun and I want to get my thoughts out here on video. So one thing I want to mention is if you're like me, you've been going on YouTube and checking out people's reviews of the R6 and the R5, looking at their shots and comparing the raw files. So one thing they don't tell you and they don't mention, and I'm not sure why, what they're using is pre-production units, meaning they're not the same ones that you're buying in store. So nobody knows if it's actually the same thing. The other thing is that the files you're looking at is that you couldn't have actually read the raw file until just a couple of days ago. If you update Lightroom, now you can see what the raw files are, but until then, all of those videos were using some kind of beta driver, meaning you may not be seeing optimized photos in those reviews. So take those with a grain of salt. I'm using a store-bought body with the updated Lightroom, so you're gonna see exactly what you would get in store, which is very important. So for my first shoot, we went down to Ontario Place, and there's some nice pedestrian bridges there that go over the highway, and I wanted to do some night photography, test this camera out in low light, but I understand that long exposure photography on a tripod is like the most relaxing, maybe even one of the easiest types of photography there is, but I didn't want to stress myself out, just wanted to have some fun. So I took the camera out, I just slapped it together, I didn't look at a single page in the manual, so I'm using whatever settings I'm kind of just working with on the fly, trying to figure this out. I'm assuming that the Canon bodies are all kind of similar and that a lot of the things are going to be in similar spots. And I was right. It was very, very intuitive and easy to use. So we'll walk through some of the shots on the computer in just a sec, but let me just dump my thoughts out here. So as I suspected in my initial impressions, my gut was right. The LCD is going to be extremely important on this camera and on cameras like this, as I'm sure every Sony user knows. I almost never used the EVF. Actually, I never did seriously on a single shot. I only looked through it just because I wanted to see what it is I had purchased here. But every shot, I used the back screen LCD to preview the shot, compose the shot, change all the settings, and whatever I needed to. Speaking of that, all you have to do is just touch an area on the screen. It focuses in on that spot, then you can click any of the settings, change the ISO, change the shutter speed, whatever you need to on camera, and it's gorgeous, it's so much fun, and it's very intuitive. So for this shoot, I just stuck with the 24-105, the EF version. I'm only going to be shooting with adapted lenses for quite a while, and it's the Mark I, and it performed really, really well in no natural sunlight. It was just lamplit, street-lit areas, and I was blown away by the performance, so let's check it out. So right off the bat, using EF lenses on the RF mount adapted really well. All functions worked properly, all images were sharp, no problems at all. There's really no need to buy all new lenses unless you really want to upgrade your gear and you have the money. Because I was shooting at night and I didn't know my camera, having an LCD was a huge plus one. I had this bright screen to look at and I could see all the settings, so I didn't have to go and find a light somewhere to try and find the dial I was looking for. Everything was nice and smooth. I really had a huge win there. I'm really happy with these shots. This first shot I combined in Photoshop because the cars were coming on one side of the street, one shot, and then the next long exposure, the other side of the street filled up. So what I did is I just went into Photoshop, got layer 1, layer 2, you can see the layer mask here, and then I just did some dodging and burning to get rid of some of the distractions. The street had a little bit too much detail. If we zoom around a little bit, you'll see just how sharp these shots were. You can see all the detail in the concrete. All the way in the back of the street, you can see every sign clearly. I'll show you the original. This is with no settings applied. Still quite vibrant, decent dynamic range, good color. And then I boosted it all for a very creative look. Same with this one. The biggest surprise of all on the first shoot was the ISO performance. This shot was taken at 25,600 ISO, typically the maximum for DSLR cameras, and it's performing as if it was 6,400 ISO on a DSLR like the 6D Mark I. It's a totally usable shot from full and even cropped. The noise is there, but it doesn't damage the shot in a way that it can't still be used. If you were to shoot 25,600 ISO on an older generation camera, it would be unusable for any practical purpose. So the Canon mirrorless has come a long way in its ISO strength. I really like how the RAW file was able to preserve so much detail at such a high ISO. This really is a low light champion. I look forward to testing this in daylight shots where I can really see how the dynamic range performs against harsh sun. This is a pretty impressive amount of detail for a 20 megapixel camera. I find a lot of camera review tests online use very predictable, repeatable tests, which is good for getting a comparison of two different cameras that you want to square off. But if you're just trying to understand if a camera is good or not on its own, you really have to throw something unpredictable at it. So I didn't plan this shoot specifically for the R6. I was going to do this anyway, and I just threw the R6 into the mix, and it held up perfectly. If anything, way easier than it would have with the 6D. Also, it was really nice not to have my eye stuck inside the eye viewfinder. I used to find my eyes straining a lot after an hour of shooting because I was squinting so much trying to look through this tiny little eye hole. It was a much more enjoyable experience. If you enjoyed this and learned something, please hit like and subscribe. Visit demaninphotography.com or my Instagram for even more info. Bye for now.